I was in Shkoder, and I was training. It was my last transfer, and we had always been walking the same way to church all the time. And this was a time where I was the branch president. I was the only missionary that was a branch president over any of the branches there. And President Ford had challenged me this last transfer. He's like, we want you to find an Albanian who can take over that branch so that it's all Albanians. And so that was me and the elder I was training's goal the whole time. It's like, elder, we need to find someone to be the branch president so that a missionary doesn't have to do this anymore. And so we had been walking the same way to church, every day. And Sunday morning, when we read from the White Handbook, I know it was the coincidence that we read it, but it said, vary your roots, wherever you go. And so we said, elder, today we're going to walk a different way to get to church. And as we were walking to church, a different way, a man stopped us on his bike and said, oh, are you missionaries? We said, yeah, we're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's like, oh, really? I've never been to that church before. And so he said, well, hey, we actually are having service here in a half an hour, so if you'd like to come by, here's the address, come here. He said, yeah, I'll come check it out. And so he came, to one church, and then he started coming to our English lessons. And then we both just had the prompting that we need to teach him. He's not just here to come to church and to come to English class, but we need to teach him. So we went through, he was so ready for the gospel, he just didn't know it. And I had some of the most spiritual lessons with him my entire mission. And he eventually was baptized, eventually got the Melchizedek priesthood and became the branch president of that branch. And so, it's just crazy. Like, President Ford knew exactly what needed to happen in that transfer. And, by us just following the rules and reading the White Handbook every day and finding that specific chapter, that specific day that led us right to the branch president of that branch now. So that was probably one of the most spiritual experiences on my mission. And then just, another story, just, it's tough in Kosovo because everyone's really, in Albania, it's kind of more relaxed with Islam, whereas, for example, if your father was Muslim, then you're Muslim as well. But I don't pray 5 times a day, but because my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather were Muslim, I'm Muslim as well, and so I have to keep that. I can't be a traitor sometimes, is what they would say. I can't go to a different religion. But in Kosovo, it's the opposite of that, where people are well rooted in their religion. So Kosovo was a really hard time for me that when I was training my missionary. And the amount of tracting and contacting and Book of Mormons and pamphlets and everything that we left. We didn't have a single baptism that transfer, but I know that me and my companion always said, like, you know what, we didn't have a baptism, but I bet you we planted a lot of seeds. And that was where I really learned to push myself, because we weren't having any success. We would have an investigator for a few days and drop, and we'd have to go find, 14 hours a day. So, that was definitely one of the harder parts of my mission, but I know that it paid off in the long run, working hard and never giving up. So these are probably the two extreme that happen one every 50,000 missionary or something like that. We were in one area and we actually had a gun pulled on us. So we had a gun right in our face, and in those situations you think you'd be scared or hesitant, but for some reason my companion and I, we weren't. We were just like, you're really gonna shoot 2 American missionaries? If you do that, everyone's gonna know, they're gonna find you, but if you want to shoot us, do it then, if you're gonna do it. but he didn't, obviously. But that was pretty crazy. One day we were walking back from a lesson, and there was a rock. It was more like a tile, but it was a thick tile. And we were just walking back, and we had seen these, pack of kids in Albania. They call them choons, like young kids that just like want to be disruptive. And so we saw them, and we were like, please don't try to pick a fight with us today. And so we walked by him and nothing happened. We were like, oh man, what a great day. Like, thank you for blessing us with that. But sure enough, as we were halfway down the street, there's this massive tile that whizzed right by my ear. I heard it whiz and just like boom, like hit the street. And we both turned around. My companion got really, really mad. And my companion was a big guy. I mean, my height, but he was a big boy. He could handle himself if anything ever happened. But he didn't. But I had to hold him back from going after them. So that was crazy. And then probably another one was in one of my last areas as well. We had a gentleman come up to us. We had kicked out his son from an English class because he was being disruptive, and it wasn't fair to the other students who were there to actually learn English. And so this man found us and came up to us and was like, if you don't let my son back in this classroom, I'm going to cut both of your bodies up, and I'm going to put them in bags, and I'm going to throw them in a river, and no one's ever going to find you. I was like, wow, that's intense. But I don't know, it just didn't like faze us, because we were, I don't know, like we knew that we were there and that like the Lord was going to protect us. So I was like, I mean, as long as we're smart about this, like it probably won't happen. So we're like, okay, well, we're sorry, like maybe you can talk to your son about behaving, and we wouldn't have that problem. And so it was a brief like a minute and a half encounter, but that was still pretty intense, because he's like right in both of our faces. Like you can smell his breath. Like he definitely had coffee and probably a glass of raki like before, so he might have been a little drunk, but that was pretty crazy. Those are my extreme stories, and my mom knows all of these, so it's not a surprise to her.